Holy sweet mother of God, folks. Thanks for listening to Radio Free Brooklyn. Thanks for listening to The Next Best Thing. I'm your host, Jonathan B. Lerner, keeping you company every Monday night from 10 until midnight right here on Radio Free Brooklyn. Now, if you've listened to this show, if you've even caught one episode over the past few weeks, you're probably goddamn sick and tired of hearing me talk about anything Kansas City related. It has been football on the brain, as you surely know. The Kansas City Chiefs are once again Super Bowl champions. Pause for applause. Pause for applause. Thank you very much. Now, I'm afraid if that is, in fact, the category you fall into, you're not in luck. However, it's not so much football I'm going to be discussing tonight. And while the impetus is Kansas City related, both topics, both primary topics tonight, are really much more pertinent to the larger world, the larger community. So hold on to your hats in that regard. Also, I just have to point out, not that I can't imagine this will impact any of you, but I am trying something new. Despite looking like a complete zombie and monster, I'm doing something different. Oh wow, I'm trying to bring this show and perhaps this station into the 21st century and incorporate a video aspect to the show. So right now, while this show is airing live on Radio Free Brooklyn, it is also live streaming on the YouTube. If you are so inclined, you can go, I don't even really know. I mean, youtube.com/Jonathan B. Lerner, I think. And tune in and you can not only listen, but watch the show as well. That's youtube.com/Jonathan B. Lerner, JONATHAN, B as in boy, LERNER, no spaces, and you can tune in. Now, unfortunately, there's a little something weird going on with our external monitors here. So when you're not, when I'm not talking, you won't be able to hear what I'm playing, which is really annoying. That would not normally happen. But unfortunately, whenever the speakers are turned on here in the studio, it gives this constant sound like we're in a freaking elementary school computer lab. Isn't that great? So I just turned them off. Had to. Could not stand that external hiss. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So anyway, folks, I there's a lot to talk about, a lot to cover tonight, a lot going on in the news, a lot going on in the world, and I feel strongly about pretty much all of them. So, why don't we take a quick break? And then when we come back, we'll just launch right into it and we can discuss it from top to bottom. Get excited, folks. You're listening to The Next Best Thing on Radio Free Brooklyn, and we will be right back. Test, test, test. Better, better. Hello. All right. All right, folks. Thanks for listening to Radio Free Brooklyn. Thanks for listening to The Next Best Thing. Before we launch into it, let me explain. So last week, I I thought that my voice was going because the Super Bowl had been the night before, and I had done a little screaming. I felt something coming on. I thought maybe I was just losing my voice, Turns out, no. No, no. It was the vid. I got COVID again, and I don't know how, but I don't really care how. Um, don't worry. If other hosts are listening to this, it's been about a week. I shouldn't be contagious anymore, and whatever. But I got the vid again. Speaking of which, and it's a good thing I bit the bullet and got tested. You know, the first time I had COVID, by the way, so COVID struck in what, March of 2020? I never got COVID. Even when it was rampant in this city and all over the country and really all throughout the world, I managed to stay virus free, plague free for years and years. I didn't get COVID until probably February of 2023, so about a year ago. I was vid free for 3 years. I survived really the staunchest strands and all these, different variations of it. And then, bam, when you least expect it, I got hit with it, and now I've been hit with it again. But back the first time I got it, when I went to get my booster shot at a pharmacy around my apartment, they gave me a complimentary eight, eight free take home COVID tests for free. And it was actually, they viewed it as a prescription that I think had like four, at least four, if not more, refills. So I could have gotten, I imagine, eight more free tests subsequently. Now, unfortunately, very shortly after I got that booster, that pharmacy shut down and I couldn't find the replacement. So I never got any more free tests, but I never needed really anymore because eight was plenty. Like I said, I went 3 years without ever getting it. But a combination of testing once or twice just for the fun of it throughout that period and testing multiple times when I actually did have it just to see if I still had it and so on. I did get through those eight tests eventually. So this time around, I had to go find more tests. Folks, to purchase two COVID tests, $30. $30 at a Dwayne Reed, Walgreens, whatever you want to call it. $30 for two. I got an eight for free. I mean, shouldn't these always be free? I thought they wanted us to test. Jesus. Anyway, so I'm just getting over the vid. Um, it's much better now, obviously, than it was. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't. But I noticed today I was laughing. I was earnestly, genuinely, actually laughing kind of hard at something, and boy, I could definitely still feel it then. So, anyway, that's my story on that. Okay, folks, let's dive right in because there's a lot to cover. So, why don't we just quit delaying the inevitable and jump right into what's going on in the news, what's going on in the world, shall we? Hmm. Yes, here's what's making news tonight. All right. Ugh, I got to brace myself for this because, like I said, I am still, I'm in recovery, but I am still sick. Okay. As I mentioned, unless you truly live at the very bottom of a river, not even under a rock, but down in the river, you know that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. Well, it's customary whenever a city wins one of the major sports championships, be it a Super Bowl, a World Series, a Stanley Cup, and so on. The city has a parade. They celebrate. They come together and celebrate that victory. Well, that's exactly what Kansas City did last last Wednesday. I wanted to be there very badly. And to be perfectly frank with you, I had every intention of being there. I was going to be there, but the aforementioned COVID-19 that I've been struck down with, well, if it's getting better now, imagine how it was last Tuesday. Not good. In fact, it was really at its peak. I hadn't officially been tested at that point, so I didn't know it was COVID. So it's a good thing I didn't go. But that's really not why I didn't go. I'm the type. I grew up with two parents. My dad, a doctor. My mom, a nurse practitioner. Youngest of five kids. So I grew up in a family where, unless you were bleeding from the eyeballs, you went to school. You powered through it. You got your ass out of bed and out of the house. So my mentality, I work when sick. It's not good, probably. It certainly isn't what they say you should do. Rest up, take it easy, hydrate, have some soup and ginger ale. That's just, I don't do that. I power through it, okay? So I was planning to go, and I was going to be there. In fact, I was so adamant that I was going to be there that less than 12 hours before the parade was scheduled to get underway, as I said, I was 100% prepared to fly into Kansas City early that morning, go down to the parade and the rally, maybe probably see my nephews and my family, but I was going to take all of my Radio Free Brooklyn gear and my various press passes, and I was going to do like man on the street type stuff. I've done that before. I did it at the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. It went really well, got some great material. So I was going to do that. And I came here, I schlepped my ass, my COVID riddled ass, here into the studio on Tuesday night. And I gathered up all the equipment. It took me forever to find it, but I got the mic flag, I got the recorder, I got this, I got that. I had everything ready. And to top it off, it's not easy to get here via the subway. It's pretty easy, but it's a pain in the ass. I typically have to take the G to the L. Not a terrible thing, but I don't like transferring, and it's just a pain in the ass. Well, that night, because this fucking subway system sucks, there's always, don't even get me started. I'm so fed up with New York City. The subway fucking sucks. Let's look at it right now. As we see, now it's Monday night. So really, they try and schedule service changes and maintenance and all that horse shit. They're supposed to try and schedule that on the weekends and overnight and shit like that. Well, as I sit here right now, okay, the 1, 2, 3, part suspended, plus 4 more alerts. 4, 5, 6, delays. 7, Saturday schedule. ACE, delays plus 5 more alerts. BDFM, part suspended, plus 6 more alerts. G, Saturday schedule. JZ, part suspended, plus 3 more alerts. L, Saturday schedule. NQRW, part suspended, plus 4 more alerts. Not a single subway line is running as it's supposed to on a fucking Monday. I did not plan for this. This is just how it is nowadays. It drives me fucking crazy. To get to my Super Bowl party, it wasn't complicated. It shouldn't have been hard. Yes, my friend lives pretty far from me, but it's just a straight shot once you get on the B or the D or the C, but the C takes longer. So I chose to walk down to the BD. And I waited and waited and waited and waited. You see where this is going? It never fucking came. It never came. And they have those worthless monitors that say, Uptown BD, 1 minute. Uptown NQR, 5 minutes. Well, those are apparently those are not only inaccurate and worthless, but they're actually fake outs. I stood there and waited and waited and waited, and I would have given up much earlier if the fucking thing hadn't said BD 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. 10 minutes later, 1 minute. What? So I kept thinking, well, surely. I mean, it's obviously running behind, but surely it'll get here soon. It says 1 minute. No, it didn't. I ended up paying almost $100 to take an Uber from my place, from Atlantic Avenue, Barclays Center, all the way up to my friend's place at like 160th Street. And that's just so typical. I mean, even when I'm running errands nowadays, on a normal Wednesday afternoon or, late afternoon, evening, I will take the train and get myself to Union Square or whatever, and then getting home is a nightmare. The subways are fucking horrible. Now, why was I going? See, this is what happens. I go off on these tangents. Oh, yes. So to get here, I was going to take the G to the L to get here, and then the L to the G to get home. It wasn't fun. It wasn't convenient. I probably figured there would be some delays, but it was worth it. I was going to get my ass here because I needed that gear to take to the parade. Well, of course, the G wasn't running in huge, massive sections. So I had to walk 15 miles and I had to walk really far to get to the G, to get to the L. And then to get home, I just said, fuck it. I'll just city bike. So it was money. It was exhausting. It was really exhausting because by the time I got here, like I said, I had to find all this shit. So all of that is just to say that by the time I finally got home, it was just hours. Like I was going to be, unfortunately, I didn't think to do all of this, to go back to Kansas City and attend the parade until like a day before. So I hadn't even bought a plane ticket. And I was so going to do it. I was going to pay the airfare to get home and be there that day. But by the time I finally got home on Tuesday night, I'd gotten my ass here. I'd managed to get my COVID riddled ass here, scrounged up the equipment, hauled it back home, and by the time I got into my apartment, I was so exhausted. I was just wiped. I was completely running on empty. And I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And that is so unlike me, especially if I made it that far. So I didn't go and I regretted it immediately. I was so sad. But I'm telling you all of this because the whole point is I was going to be there. I was supposed to be there. The parade seemed to be going off without a hitch. Everyone I spoke to said the Kansas City seemed like the happiest place on earth that day. It was a beautiful day. It was like 60 degrees. It was unseasonably warm. Everyone was down there. They said almost 1 million people attended the parade. 1 million people in Kansas City. That's a lot. That's a lot. I can't tell you right off the top of my head, but that's almost half of the people who live in the Kansas City metropolitan area, which is made up of parts of Kansas and Missouri. It was a glorious event until it wasn't. Right after, towards the very end of the parade and the rally, where all the players and coaches and stuff of the Chiefs get up on stage and speak to the crowd and lead this big celebratory pep rally, gunfire broke out. Gunfire broke out. Shooting. Bullets. One person is confirmed dead. Over 20 people were injured. Most of them children. My nephews were there. Friends of mine who have small children were there. I was supposed to be there. It turns out that the shooters are two juveniles. And they say that it wasn't terrorism. It wasn't it wasn't, a planned mass shooting. It was just a dispute between the two of them, which ended up in taking out AR-15s in this parade filled with people and shooting at each other, and as a byproduct, shooting other people. If I weren't battling illness, if I hadn't been running on empty, I would have paid I would have paid a lot of money, and I would have been right there in the middle of it. Again, my nephews were there, my sisters were there, friends of mine, some of whom I've known since I was 5 or 6 years old. They were there with their small children. Now, I'm very lucky that everyone close to me was unharmed. And I'm even luckier considering this is not the first time some of them have been have been caught up in a mass shooting, have been exposed to gun violence. Now, for days afterwards, I was really affected by this because it wasn't just another mass shooting, but it was my hometown, my city that I love so much. And it was such a beautiful day where the city was celebrating, and someone is dead, kids are in the hospital. They were traumatized. People have been traumatized. And I have to say this. You know, I've said this before, but it really, really boiled over after this. When one of these events, when one of these mass shootings or any shooting really does impact me directly, and that's inevitably going to happen to all of us, all I can say is it had better be me who gets killed. Because if it's someone I love, I I get scared even thinking about it. I really do. I will be so overcome with rage. I will be so enraged. I feel enraged when I'm not directly impacted, but if someone I love, if one of my little nephews who loves the Chiefs, all he wanted for Christmas was a ticket to a Chiefs game and he got to go. If he had been, I don't know what I will do. I don't know what I will do. And my anger will not be directed exclusively towards the shooter either. It will be at everyone. It will be at everyone. It will be at us. We, yes, we can say, oh, it's just those leaders. They never do anything about it. Well, who elects those leaders? We do. Now, I've never been one to throw my hands in the air and just give up, to lose all hope that things will change and that we will snap out of this complacent state of doing nothing, of being so totally desensitized and ultimately okay. We are okay with these massacres happening over and over and over again, but it's really hard. It's really hard to let them to be so impacted every time these happen because they happen all the time. They happen all the time. And I have no faith in this country to do anything about it. I haven't for well over 10 goddamn years. On December 12th, 2012, when all of those 6 and 7-year-olds were shot and killed along with their teachers and their principal at Sandy Hook Elementary School, when those babies, when those kindergartners were slaughtered less than 2 weeks before Christmas, and we did nothing, absolutely nothing, when we did jack shit in response to the most horrendous, unspeakably awful event that could ever take place, that was it for me. That was it for me. If that wasn't going to be enough to fucking snap us out of it and force us to take action, what could possibly do it? Nothing. And think about this, folks. Just think about it for a second. Think about all the mass shootings we've gone through, not to mention the hundreds of smaller shootings that happen every single day that we don't hear about. Think about how many people have died at the barrel of a gun since Sandy Hook happened. I mean, for God's sakes, it wasn't even 6 months after Sandy Hook that the shooting in a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado happened. Then the Orlando nightclub. Then the Las Vegas Music Festival. Then Fort Hood. Then Isla Vista. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. The Charleston Church. San Bernardino. Uvalde. It just keeps happening. And we keep doing nothing about it. Nothing about it. It's always the same goddamn charade. Tributes, thoughts, and prayers, maybe a horseshit debate at some town hall broadcast on CNN, then it's on to the next thing. No action is ever taken. Nothing ever changes. The idea that we know this is happening and we know that it's getting worse and worse, faster and faster, happening more often and often, but we just look the other way. We just choose not to think about it. That's unconscionable. That's unconscionable. That, I mean, think about that. That's in the macro. Let's zoom in a little bit. If you were standing on a street corner and you saw someone pull out a gun and point it at a child or an adult, an elderly person, if you saw them pull out a gun and point it at another person and you just looked the other way, what would that say about you? Now, I'm not even saying you have to throw on a Superman cape and tackle them, but you could scream. I mean, you could do something. Something. Well, that's what we're doing. We are collectively plugging our ears, closing our eyes, and pretending it's not happening. And that is unconscionable. A friend of mine who has small children, I was talking to him about this, and he just told me point blank that he chooses not to think about this stuff. I understand it. I understand why he would think or feel that way. I do. He has two small children. The idea of something happening to them, what did he say to me? What he said was, he said, I like to distance myself from these events. I have to, he said, the lottery is hard to win. I assume getting caught up in a shooting is hard to happen, but that's ridiculous. I told him that all the people at at these schools, Columbine, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, Uvalde, all the churches, all the people at these music festivals, in the nightclubs, at the movie theaters, there are way more people impacted by gun violence than lotto winners. But it's just a way to not think about it. It's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. Well, what if it does? It's going to happen to us. At this rate, it's going to happen to all of us. It just fills me with such, I can't believe that we as a people are so shitty. So shitty. It fills me with unadulterated rage. And hear me now, because I'm going to say it again, and I mean this from the depths of my soul. When one of these shootings does impact me directly, I just hope to God it's me who gets killed. Because if it's someone I love and hold dear to me, then there will be no turning back for me. I'll either end up in prison or a psychiatric ward somewhere with padded walls. The days of just going on with everyday life as if nothing happened will be over for me. I mean, I'd like to think that just by voicing this and posting stuff about it, I'm at least doing more than the people who choose to look away, but it feels very, very futile. And I don't even, you know, I'm not going to complain that Bill Maher discussed it on his show because I'd rather it be discussed than not. But he on his show last week, his guests were Van Jones and Ann Coulter. Here's how they discussed it. Hmm. Okay, I'm gonna play more of it, but but again, his guests are Van Jones and Ann Coulter. Now, Van Jones was a member of the Obama administration in some capacity. He also is a contributor on CNN. He's more on the left. Ann Coulter is she's an author, a public speaker. She is very much on the right and a provocateur, big time. Now, what she's about to say, her arguments here, she hasn't said anything yet, so I'm not, you know, fucking chomping at the bit to punch her in the neck yet. But what she's about to say now, first of all, Bill Maher and I disagree on this. We agree. I mean, he's ultimately saying Bill Maher is for more restrictions and more gun laws. So all for that. But the idea that most guns are semi-automatic, blah 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 blah, don't fucking lessen it because that's not true. I mean, maybe they are. Most guns are semi-automatic, but there is a very, very big difference between not even just the way a handgun, a Cougar, pistol or whatever, handgun, the way it's handled, the way it's built, the way the bullets that go into them are very different than that of an AR-15. An AR-15, those are what are used in most of these mass shootings, and that is the type of gun that was used in this shooting at the parade. I'll keep it going because I want you to hear Ann Coulter's just mind-boggling argument, if you can even call it that. she just said and what she's actually advocating for is she's saying that not enough people have guns. First of all, as Bill Maher pointed out, this is Missouri. Missouri has the worst gun. Well, I can't even say they have the worst gun laws. They have no gun laws. They have no gun laws. No restrictions. You don't have to have a permit to conceal carry. You don't have. It doesn't matter. You can have mental illness and still get guns in Missouri. Missouri, which by the way, in case you don't know, Kansas City is in Missouri. Now, the governor of Missouri is so wretched, so morally bankrupt, that they actually were fighting because the mayor of Kansas City was actually trying to implement certain municipal laws, certain municipal policies to cut down on guns and gun crime in Kansas City because there is a shitload of it. The governor of Missouri went to battle with him on that, took it to the Supreme Court. The governor of Missouri tried to say that because all the mayor of Kansas City wanted to do was ensure that police officers in Kansas City enforced federal gun laws. The very few of them, the very weak federal gun laws that actually do exist, he wanted to make sure that his police force in Kansas City enforced those laws. The governor went to battle with him, took it to the Supreme Court saying that he should not be able to do that because Missouri's laws are so flagrantly weak, are so unbelievably non-existent that comparatively the national laws are too strong. They fight, they work to undo the very few laws we have. And she is saying that people should have more guns. That argument that's not an argument. That doesn't make sense, and people who say that are not to be taken seriously. Now, the one thing she said that I do agree with is that people who clearly the people answering these polls, because Bill Maher went through those numbers, he said that a lot of people in Missouri do want certain restrictions. But then those same people apparently elect just morally bankrupt shithole people who won't enforce or create any restrictions. So they don't vote the way they're responding to these polls. People who are obsessed with guns absolutely vote on it. That is their one and only issue that they care about. And I say to you now, if ever there was an issue to make the one and only issue to vote about on the left, it should be this. It should be this. This is an outrage. The fact that we are letting we have speed limits, we have seatbelt laws, people have to register their cars, they have to have insurance. There are so many laws and regulations for driving a car. You cannot operate a forklift. There are so many restrictions and regulations to do almost anything in this country, but guns flow like fucking water. We have to wake up and stop being so fucking stupid. And I'm tired. The NRA is bankrupt. Yes, they are powerful. It's not so much that they're powerful, it's that their voters, their supporters, are convinced that this is all that matters. So they do vote on it. We have given up. The only way we will ever see action on this, ever, is if we refuse to elect people who won't take action. It should be, if ever there was a single issue to vote on, to live and breathe and die about, this is it. This is it. It is so obvious. It is so clear. So much could be done to combat this issue. So much. And you can people can say whatever they want to make. Oh, they're already out there. The guns are already out there. Oh, people are going to break the laws. They'll still have them. That is a ridiculous fucking thing to say, and you should really be embarrassed if you actually thought to say that, because that you could say that about any laws. Why do we have any fucking law? People still speed. Doesn't mean we get rid of speed limits. People still don't wear their seatbelt. Doesn't mean we get rid of that law. People still do heroin. People still do cocaine. People still do a lot of shit that is against the law. That doesn't mean we do away with the laws. That means we hold them accountable. It's the same notion. This is so obvious. Oh, and I do get angry because I get angry at all because I can't even get angry at the politicians because we collectively as a people elect them. Oh, I can't. I just, you know, I've said this before and I'll end it here. The day I believe, and that might be way after my lifetime, but I do firmly believe that the day will come when we do snap out of this and we do actually start taking some action to combat this problem. I think the day will come when we look back at this time, this period between 2012 and whenever action is taken, when we did nothing and we allowed shooting Orlando, Las Vegas, Sandy Hook, Aurora, Colorado, San Bernardino, and on and on and on. When we saw these things happen and did nothing about them, we will look back on this time and they will think, oh my God, how could we have, how could our grandparents, our great grandparents, our great great grandparents have been so stupid, have been so uh, weak? How could they have allowed this to happen? How could they have allowed this to happen? And what's the answer? I have no idea because we are terrible people. Uh, all right. Also in the news, a human leg was found on subway tracks in the Bronx. Yeah, I was saying how much the subway sucks earlier. Now it's, I mean, so much. I mean, good God, could it get any worse? Police said a human leg was discovered in the path of a northbound 4 train at 167th Street around 1:30 p.m. on Saturday. Authorities transported the leg to the city medical examiner, and an investigation was underway to try and determine where and who it may have come from. A disembodied leg. The NYPD asked that anyone with information about the incident contact Crime Stoppers at 800 577 TIPS. I mean, yikes. What a dystopia. I feel like my voice is getting weaker and weaker. Also in the news, Jimmy Carter has officially been in hospice care for a full year. Wait a second. What did I just say? Yes, that's right. Former President Jimmy Carter has officially been in hospice care for a full year. I've commented on this before. When it's announced that someone's going into hospice care, they usually are there for a couple weeks, maybe a month or two. Hospice care, and it's always been my understanding that hospice care was where people go when they've reached a point where medical intervention is not really working, and hospice care is where they can go to just be made comfortable and live out the rest of their lives in peace. A year? A year, his grandson, Jason Carter, says that, quote, his spirit is as strong as ever. Jimmy Carter is 99 years old. He is the oldest living U.S. president in history. I also will say that once his beloved wife of like a billion years, Rosalind Carter, when she passed away a few months ago, I thought it was only going to be a matter of time, matter of days before Jimmy passed away. Because typically you do hear that when people lose their partners, especially when they're both elderly, they usually die pretty, really close to one another. He is still going strong. I can't believe it. 99 years old. Guess he feels he has more to do. Also in the news. Ah, yes. 154 historians and presidential experts say that Biden versus Trump is not a close call. Yes, it truly baffles and angers me. What else is new? It baffles and angers me that polls seem to show it's going to be a close race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump this year, but that's not how these experts and historians see it. They actually rate Joe Biden in the top third of US presidents, while Donald Trump comes in, you guessed it, dead last. Dead last. The 2024 edition of the Presidential Greatness Project expert survey has Biden in 14th place. 14th place. He's the 46th president. They rank him 14th. That's just ahead of Woodrow Wilson and Ronald Reagan. Get that? Ahead of Ronald Reagan. Donald Trump, oh, yeah, Donald Trump comes in 45th. 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 Behind fellow MPG Andrew Johnson and James Buchanan, who is really the perennial cellar dweller in such ratings due to his pre Civil War leadership or lack thereof. Dead last. On the survey's 0 to 100 scale of overall greatness, a rating of 50 means a president was average, while 0 means a president was considered a miserable failure. Only the top three presidents, Abraham Lincoln at number 1, followed by FDR and then George Washington, those are the only three who scored above a 90. The drop off was very sharp from there, with no one else above an 80. Roughly half the presidents were rated below 50. Trump got 10.97 out of 100. 10.97. Keep in mind, 154 experts, a lot of them are conservatives. A lot of them are members of the Federalist Society. He got a 10.97 out of 100, easily the worst showing, while Biden came in at 62.66, tied with John Adams. Some of Biden's appeal could be due to the person he followed in the Oval Office. Trump was seen as, quote, by far the most polarizing of the ranked presidents, again selected by 170 respondents. If only stuff like this mattered to the voting population. Too bad we're God just miserably stupid and bad. Okay, what else is in the news? Oh, yes. FBI informant, and I use that term loosely, has been charged with lying about Joe. Good Lord, I'm losing my voice, folks. It's going. I can feel it. Hopefully you can't hear it. FBI informant charged with lying about Joe and Hunter Biden's ties to Ukrainian firm. Oh, yeah. Remember that whole story the Republicans have been pushing and using to utterly destroy Hunter Biden's life and even impeach Joe Biden over? Well, it turns out the whole fucking thing was made up. Alexander Smirnov told the FBI in June of 2020 that a Burisma executive had claimed to have hired Hunter Biden to, quote, protect us through his dad from all kinds of problems. That's what prosecutors said. Well, they now say that, prosecutors say that though Smirnov claimed to have had contact with Burisma executives near the end of the Obama administration, when Joe Biden was the vice president, it all actually took place after Obama and Biden left office. In other words, Biden would have had absolutely no ability to influence U.S. policy whatsoever. From the report, quote, in short, the defendant transformed his routine and unextraordinary business contacts with Burisma in 2017 and later into bribery allegations against public official number one, the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party for president, after expressing bias against public official number one and his candidacy. That's what the indictment said. Smirnov is 43 years old. He was indicted on charges of making a false statement and creating a false and fictitious record. If convicted, he faces a maximum penalty of 25 years in prison. Noteworthy, the charges were filed by Justice Department Special Counsel David Weiss, who has separately charged Hunter Biden with firearm and tax violations. Okay, let that fucking sink in. All right. Last thing before we take a break, and then I get into my main story. So I've been following the the case in Georgia. And if you're unaware, Fani Willis, the district attorney in Georgia, the one who's heading the case against Trump for trying to steal the election, all I want to do is find 11,000 whatever votes, trying to steal the election. Well, they're going after her because they say that the special counsel that she appointed to lead the investigation or whatever is someone that she had a romantic relationship with and was therefore going to benefit from the whatever. And the case is being heard by a judge now to see if she should be disqualified for conflicts of interest. I don't understand this. First of all, the only person it's been, the man and Fani Willis, both parties involved here, have been very clear. They say that their romantic relationship was very short-lived and only happened after he had been appointed. But regardless, there's one woman who's saying that it happened before, but no proof. It's just her word, and she says she can't really remember much detail about it. But the bottom line is, what impact does that have on the actual case? None whatsoever. I don't understand it. I really don't understand it at all. What does this have to do with the case against Trump? Nothing. This is a sideshow. This is a distraction. It's really baffling to me that she's being, has to go through this. And, Fani Willis, at one point when she was on the stand, she made a very good and important point, one that I think everyone should hear. I am not on trial, no matter how hard you try and put me on trial. I don't understand this motion to disqualify her. This is all a sideshow. This is a Trump tactic. Delay, 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 deflect, deflect, deflect. What about it? I mean, this is bullshit. This is such bullshit. Okay. All right. We'll follow this more closely. It's ongoing. Okay. Those are the main news stories I wanted to talk about. Now, when we come back, I'm going to delve into a story that right now is going on in Kansas City, but it is something, it's a tale as old as time. And once again, I really hope the people wise up and do the smart thing. You're listening to The Next Best Thing on Radio Free Brooklyn. Can't wait to launch into that, folks. Can't wait to launch into that. You're listening to The Next Best Thing on Radio Free Brooklyn, and we will be. I hate Spotify. Spotify sucks. Threw off my goddamn timing. You're listening to The Next Best Thing on Radio Free Brooklyn, and we will be right back. Radio Free Brooklyn is a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide a free and open platform to our community and promote media literacy, education, and free expression. We rely primarily on donations from listeners like you. So, if you'd like to support donate. You can donate as little as $1, and every cent helps us to continue to stay on the air. So please help support independent community media by pledging whatever you can afford. And remember, RB is a 501c3 nonprofit, so your contribution is tax deductible to the fullest extent of the law. Again, that's radiofreebrooklyn.org/donate.
This is the next best thing.
All right, I'm going to cut it off right there. I can't stand to hear any more of it. That was a broadcast, a local news broadcast in Kansas City a year ago, from a year ago. And I was against it then, I'm against it now. And I'll tell you why. This owner of the Kansas City Royals has only been the owner of the Kansas City Royals for like a year and a half, 2 years maybe. He clearly came in with this in mind from the beginning. And he's pulling a very, very, very tired and repetitive playbook here. Now, look, I'm extremely lucky. I was an extremely lucky kid growing up in Kansas City. I learned to ski before I could ride a bike. I spent my summer afternoons playing tennis and swimming at one of the local country clubs. And my family had season tickets to both the Royals and Chiefs. Now, the Royals, the Royals and Chiefs play at what's called the Truman Sports Complex. I always preferred going to Royals games over Chiefs games as a young kid. Why? Because doing so was basically a quiet outing with a friend. I always got to take a friend. It was always pretty much empty because they fucking sucked. So we could sit back, enjoy the game, take our gloves, try and catch foul balls while talking and goofing off. Chiefs games, even when the team was bad, they were packed. People were super loud, and I was kind of a sensitive child. The point is this. This is the bottom line, okay? The Royals, they don't need a new stadium. They don't need a new stadium at all. Kauffman Stadium, where the Royals play, has been ranked within the top 10 major league ballparks by over 8 nationally, not local, but national publications within the past 3 or 4 years alone. I have the links. I can share them with you. So there's no need for a new stadium whatsoever. Whatsoever. Kauffman Stadium was recently renovated. It is gorgeous. It is unique. They have beautiful fountains, the huge Crown Vision scoreboard, and it is named after the founder of this team, the guy who brought professional baseball to the city, and was Ewing Kauffman, a pioneer, a visionary, an innovator. He did more for Kansas City than any single person probably ever has. And I love Kauffman Stadium. And if we move it, this owner wants to move it. He wants to build some billion-dollar stadium right in downtown Kansas City. Now, the stadiums as they are currently located, most people would say they're in the middle of nowhere. And that's kind of true. They are off outside of downtown, right by I-70, the highway. When I drive, I always, my dog Charlie and I have turned this we've made it an annual trek, a kind of annual tradition to drive here from New York City home to Kansas City for the holidays. And one of the very last kind of welcoming signs we see is on I-70 when we drive right past Arrowhead Stadium and Kauffman Stadium. We see them, and I love it. Always been kind of my welcome home. Here's the thing, okay? There's so much to cover here. All of the reasons being given as to why the Royals need a new stadium are complete and utter horseshit. Complete. He's even in that news report. You heard him say, or you heard the news person say that the owner was saying, "quote We want to ensure that we have a world class ballpark that stays competitive with our peers." Last I checked, the ballparks don't compete; the teams do. Mind you, yes, the Royals had two very good years. They went to back World Series in 2014 and 2015, and they won it in 2015. And guess what? When that happened, when they were really good, and you can go back and check the footage. When the Royals were really good, Kauffman Stadium was packed. Arrowhead Stadium is famously the loudest, most rambunctious stadium in the world. Not the country, but the world. It literally holds the Guinness World Record for loudest crowd noise. That is how much Kansas City fans love their teams. If he wants to bring in money and get fans to come back to the park, put money into the team, dickhead, not a stadium. The only reason, look, okay, again, this is going to sound like it's just me being a homer and I'm just longing for my childhood and I love Kauffman Stadium. Horseshit. That's the point. That's the point. That's the only reason. That's the only real reason that this owner, who just showed up out of nowhere, bought the team, that's the only reason he wants to do this. So many public letters have gone out, been released by the team and put in the newspaper saying that we want to stay competitive with the other franchises. We want to make sure we have a world class ballpark. Blah blah. That's horseshit. That's fucking horse. All he wants to do, he wants to build a stadium that he can rename, that he can sell the naming rights to, and keep that money. That's the point. Right now, Kauffman Stadium is the sixth oldest stadium in Major League Baseball, and it's the only stadium in the American League named in honor of a person. So he wants to tear it down and build a new ballpark named probably Commerce Bank Park or, fucking corporate America Field and keep that revenue. In this new stadium, he's going to have a shitload of luxury boxes. I don't know who the fuck's going to buy buy tickets to sit in them and watch a shitty team that he produces, but that's what this is about. They don't need a new stadium. The stadium, again, has ranked in the top 10, consistently and recently by national publications. It's gorgeous. It's very recently renovated. And the fact that it is out of the way, it's not in the heart of downtown, that's a perk, not a negative. It is out of people's way. On game day, traffic doesn't get completely jammed and clogged up in highly populated areas like the plaza or downtown or whatever. That's a perk, not a negative. If they've recently announced that they want to put it in what's called the Crossroads district of Kansas City. That is, I can't even believe it. I can't even believe it. I initially misread it, and I thought that they said they wanted to put it like in the West Bottoms, kind of an area that is downtown but kind of off, not so in the way. Putting a stadium in the Crossroads district would be a nightmare. Folks, let me just fill you in here. New York City has two teams in every major sport: the Mets and the Yankees, the Jets and the Giants, the Rangers and the Long Islanders, the Nets and the Knicks. Not only do the Jets and the Giants not play like in Times Square, they don't even play in Manhattan. They don't even play in the state of New York. Their stadium is in New Jersey. It's very nice. I went there to watch the Chiefs beat the Jets last fall. But it's out of the way. To put a stadium in downtown Kansas City would be a nightmare. Would be a nightmare. And just like you heard that guy say, who is, by the way, an economist, professional sports teams make money in a lot of ways: naming rights, ticket sales, concessions, luxury box income, income from non-baseball events. That's what this is about. He wants to build a stadium downtown where they can have concerts and rodeos and circuses and carnivals and whatever else. He can have more luxury boxes that are super expensive and no one can afford but his corporate buddies. He wants to sell the naming rights. He wants to suck all of the personality and all the artistry and all of the tradition. And yes, there is some sentimentality, but again, we're not talking about an old decrepit stadium. Kauffman Stadium is beautiful. It's beautiful. Now, they talk about, the best way for a sports team to make money is, yes, it's by ticket sales. It's by fucking gouged parking expenses. It is by concessions and selling team merchandise and all of that stuff. The best way to do that is to have a good fucking team. One might think that the Royals struggle to get fans excited enough to come out and watch the games or buy the jerseys or hot dogs or a few beers and all that. Well, yeah, that might, I can understand why you'd feel that way. After all, 2022 marked the club's worst non-pandemic attendance figures in nearly half a century. But there's a clear and obvious reason for that. The team sucked. The team fucking sucked. The Royals drew over 2 million fans to the park for 3 seasons in a row. Guess when those seasons were? 2015, they won the World Series, and then the 2 seasons after that when people had hope that they might continue to be good. 15, 16, and 17. Something that had never been accomplished in 3 straight years since the club did it in the 80s, back when they won their first World Series. Both of those stretches have something in common. Those are when the Royals were good. Now, John Sherman, the owner of the Royals, he has a net worth of over $1 billion. Over $1 billion. There is no good reason to build a new stadium, and especially not with public funds. And if the Kansas City, people in Kansas City, I hope to God they hear me, wake the fuck up. Do not allow this to happen. Well, here's why. Usually it's because the owners say we have to have a new stadium, otherwise, we're going to move. That's the biggest threat. That's the biggest threat. Now, Ewing Kaufman, again, I mean, he is a hero in Kansas City and really the world. He's a pioneer, visionary. He he had in his will and the succession plan for the Royals that they had to stay in Kansas City. So I don't think leaving is an option, leaving the city, that is. But John Sherman sure has threatened. He said, well, if we can't build a new stadium, well, we might have to move to Kansas City, Kansas, or, Lenexa, or some bullshit threat. Listen, I can break down, in the very first open letter to Royals fans that he wrote, he said, quote, in the spirit of Ewing Kauffman, our current mission is to look ahead to ensure that Major League Baseball and the Kansas City Royals will thrive in this region for decades to come. Well, that's a wonderful thought, but something any Royals fan can and should appreciate. But demolishing Kauffman Stadium and moving the Royals downtown into Commerce Bank Park, that would do nothing to further that goal. Nothing whatsoever. Okay, I'm going to ramble, so I'm going to cut to this clip that I find so fitting. This whole scenario happened. This has happened so many times, but the most recent and I think the most obvious example of this would have to be the Miami Marlins. The Miami Marlins pulled a shit trick like this back in 2012, I believe. And it was a disaster. Ask any Marlins fan, ask any baseball person. They can tell you it was a fraud, it was a Ponzi scheme, and it's been exposed as such. And I have to say, Bryant Gumbel did a great piece on this on his show, Real Sports. It is so applicable. That is exactly what's happening now. Kansas Cityans should absolutely just say, absolutely not. But much to my surprise and dismay, they aren't. They seem to be kind of apathetic about it. Some are even all for it because the idea of something shiny and new is exciting to them, I guess. It is so fucking stupid and so insane. That's what it is. And now, did you hear what he said? He said that the guys claimed that attendance was low and they didn't have the income to really keep the stadium up. Blah, blah, blah. Again, how do sports teams make money? By fans buying tickets, paying for parking, paying for hot dogs and beers and jerseys. I promise you, the Chiefs are having no problem selling all of those things. People, I mean, this is horse shit. It's all horse shit. John Sherman, the owner of the Royals, has said publicly, he said publicly things like, quote, the renovations required at the K, that's what they call compensating. He says the renovations required at the K to achieve our objectives would cost as much or more than the price tag to develop a new ballpark. That's absolute horseshit. That is a spectacularly stupid, false thing to say. The Royals, they unveiled a $250 million renovation of the K just prior to the 2009 season. And then at the end of 2020, more updates were made. This time to the video board, making it the tallest LED video display in baseball. Building an entirely new stadium could cost well over $1 billion. In fact, the initial proposition had a stadium worth that would cost $2 billion. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, the things he's saying. Yankee Stadium, the new Yankee Stadium, which opened in 2009, that cost $1.5 billion. Globe Life Field, where the Rangers play in Texas, that opened in 2020, it cost $1.1 billion. So the K was just renovated. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. John Sherman also said, quote, a new home would be far better as an investment both for local taxpayers and the Kansas City community. That's absolutely ridiculous. Where they want to build it in the Crossroads, it's going to wipe out where people live. It's going to wipe out businesses. I mean, I can't tell you enough that there's so much data on this. There's so much data on this. Building new stadiums do not help any economy. And again, the most crazy part about this is there's already a stadium. They have a stadium. It's a beautiful stadium. It's unique. It's beautiful. He should be focused on building a winning team that will bring fans back to the ballpark, and they'll spend money. I promise you, I'm one of them. I bought a lot of Royals gear in that stretch from 2013 to 2015. I bought a lot of Chiefs gear in recent times. I have made it I usually try and go to a game at least once a year with my mom. We don't have season tickets anymore, so we have to spend money on those. I mean, like, this is such an outrage. It's a con. It's a con, and I can't believe Kansas Cityans aren't more up in arms about it. By the way, this aired in 2013. The Marlins, I don't think they've had a winning season since then. So what this guy was saying was, say it with me, horseshit. It was just horseshit. They've never, and they certainly haven't been in the playoffs. It's pretty hard to make the playoffs in Major League Baseball. I remember when they had a lot of good players, the Marlins. They had Giancarlo Stanton. They had Kristen Yelich. They had uh, Osuna, Marcelo Osuna. Well, then Giancarlo was traded to the Yankees. Kristen Yelich went to the Brewers. Ozuna went to the Cardinals, and they've never been good since. It's all a ruse. It's horseshit.